Ladies and gentlemen, it seems the Chicago Bulls free agency period might be coming towards an end, as we still are unsure if there's any more business left to do for Chicago. But one thing that has never ever been out of question is that some of these players are still in trade talks. And I think the Chicago Bulls will eventually have to pull a trigger on one of these trades. So this is going to be a video trying to discuss which of these players are the Chicago Bulls considering trading. Now, to keep in mind and to give you a warning, some of these people you will love getting traded and some of these people you won't. But the fact of the matter is, all of them have been in talks to eventually get traded from the Chicago Bulls. So who are they, and will the Bulls eventually pull the trigger on one of those trades for one of those players? Let's do it. What's up, everybody? It's the Aiden Sports Show, and welcome back to another video. Today we've got a Chicago Bulls video in relation to the trades that could potentially happen from the Chicago Bulls, specifically towards our players. We have been in a number of trade talks for a long time now, and some of our best players to some of our mediocre players have been in line to getting traded from the Chicago Bulls, have been rumored for several months to get traded from the Chicago Bulls. Now, none of those things have definitely come to par yet, but one of those, if not more, could definitely happen within the future. And since there is no free agency news at all to talk about for the Chicago Bulls, I kind of wanted to make this video to let you guys know that the job for the Chicago Bulls front office and the job to get players traded, maybe to make this team better within the future, is not done just quite yet. It might be, but it might not. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Aiden Sports Show YouTube channel. Turn notifications on and let me know in the comments below, out of all the players that I'm going to mention to you today, which of those players would you like to see get traded from the Chicago Bulls? And hell, why not? If you have a trade that you believe that any team would accept for some of these players, put it in the comments below. And if I do remember, I will try to give you my opinions on your trades and also the players that you'd like to see traded. So I think it's time to start from the bottom up. And the first player, and I think the most obvious player that people want to get traded, that may be getting traded or potentially even waived, because I think waive is just as well as getting traded for some people, is Cristiano Felicio. I've said a lot of things about Cristiano Felicio, and I don't really regret anything that I do say. I don't think Felicio is good enough for the Chicago Bulls roster. It is no secret that he is not a fan favorite with Chicago, and he's getting a lot of money from from our team, especially for the minutes that he plays and the game time that he plays, and of course, he gets injured a lot as well. So look, with Felicio, I don't really need to go any more in depth than what I just did. He's definitely one I think the Bulls will be considering to either waive or to get traded. Again, if we are still looking for the free agency period, if we waive Felicio, we can sign another player for $4 million. So maybe the Chicago Bulls go down that route, because I think it's very, very tough to trade a player like Felicio. But at the end of the day, this is definitely a player that I think the Bulls will try and find a way to ship off. If not, he is out of the books within 1 year. He shouldn't be re-signed with the Chicago Bulls. I mean, I'd be stunned if that happened. But ultimately, this is a player that I think is in contention to getting traded from the Chicago Bulls. So that's the first one down the line. Let's go to the second player. And that player is Thaddeus Young. Now, Thaddeus Young is a player, in my opinion, that I don't really know if he wants to be here or not. Now, last year with Jim Boylen, the reduced role as a role player for the Chicago Bulls, Thaddeus Young made it pretty clear that he did not like his new role and that ultimately he would like to be traded from the Chicago Bulls. However, with a new front office, with a new coach, new assistant coaches, and probably a new style of play, we might be able to see the best out of Thaddeus Young. Now, people have trashed, especially on the Chicago Bulls in terms of this year, people have trashed Thaddeus Young. Now, I think Thaddeus Young is a very, very, very capable player. He may be overpriced, but he's a very capable player. And I think that over the line, maybe we decide to keep this Thaddeus Young as a veteran experience on this team. But ultimately, he has been linked to trades. He's been linked to trades to the Clippers and other teams. And there are teams, in my opinion, that would absolutely love to have a player like Thaddeus Young on their team. He does everything for a team. So the fact is, he is someone that should not be ignored when it comes to trade talks. Now, obviously, if we're trying to develop even more cap space, maybe sign another free agent that is available, Thaddeus Young could be one of those players that we tried to trade for a second round pick, maybe another bad contract in return, but an expiring deal. So that's the reason why Thaddeus Young could potentially be on the trade blocks for the Chicago Bulls. Ultimately, he's not really been that much of a fan favorite for us. So I guess that's why people want to see this happen. And it has been rumored to happen at least once or twice within the past few months. So that is a player that maybe the Chicago Bulls are considering trading as well. In my opinion, this doesn't mean that he will get traded. Again, doesn't mean Felicio will get traded. Doesn't mean that any player that I do mention will get traded. But the fact of the matter is, you can't ignore trade rumors when they're out there. Even if they're just completely nonsense, there's a reason why they're being rumored. And maybe that is why for Thaddeus Young. The third player that we need to talk about that could potentially be traded from the Chicago Bulls, this one is a bit interesting, you know. It's Tomas Satoransky. Now, again, we've given up a lot of point guards, and we got a few guards to come to the Chicago Bulls. I mean, we got Garrett Temple in free agency. We signed Devon Dotson it was basically to a two-way contract, but he was an NBA draft candidate. So we've lost a few point guards in Chris Dunn and Shaquille Harrison. So I think out of everybody, Satoransky is probably the least likely player to get traded on the Chicago Bulls, which for some people will be an absolute disaster. For others, there's an opportunity there for Satoransky to perform. Now, Satoransky, we all know as the starter of the Chicago Bulls, failed to deliver. But I still think there is a place for him on this bench. I don't think he's a terrible point guard. I think that he needs to be more aggressive, and I think with his size and his frame, he should be able to shoot over people and get buckets. I feel like he's more hesitant than he is aggressive, and that is where I think Satoransky's weaknesses lie. Because defensively, he's okay. Passing, he's okay. Scoring, he's okay. But aggressiveness, he's not aggressive. And we need more aggressiveness out of our players. And I think Satoransky has been in trade talks. Bulls fans do not want Satoransky here for the most part. But at the end of the day, me personally, and this is only my opinion alone, I can't speak for the Bulls organization. I can't speak for Bulls fans across the world because they have their own opinions and their own minds. Me personally, I think Satoransky has a place on this bench. He's overpriced, again, as many of our players are. And that is thanks to the old management scheme that we do have. These players are overpriced, but it doesn't mean they don't belong. And maybe we're trying to give these players a chance to see if they deserve a future within the Chicago Bulls for another year. Because next year, Thaddeus Young can easily get traded. Next year, Tomas Satoransky can easily get traded because they're going to be on expiring deals. So there is an element of things there that will allow us to be able to make these deals happen one way or another. This year or next year, there will be trade talks about these players, and Satoransky is going to be one of those players. Moving on to the small forward, we have Otto Porter Jr. $28 million for a 1 year. A lot of money for Otto Porter. He could potentially be in trade talks, and as of recently, he has been in trade talks. Now, to be fair, when you're talking about Otto Porter in a trade, that you have to get a contract very similar because there's not many teams that's going to have the cap space to get a $28 million player. But we could see Otto Porter in trade for potential picks. Maybe we make some sort of deal where we pay some of the fee for Otto Porter. Obviously, $28 million. It could be down to one of those things, but he's definitely been in trade talks. Again, for $28 million, it's either you play him and then he doesn't come back, or you trade him and maybe you bring him back on a team-friendly deal later on. Maybe he just doesn't come back at all. But Otto Porter is someone that will always be in trade talks throughout the entire year. I don't think there's any secret about that. And let's see if the Chicago Bulls pull the deal to make that happen. Now, if we do trade him during free agency, we're going to have a lot of cap space. If we get a very lesser deal, obviously down the line, maybe for around $15 million, then we have $14 million to spend. So we could go and splash that money on a good player. But ultimately, I don't think he'll get traded in free agency. I think he's more inclined to get traded towards the end of the trade deadline, where there might be a few injuries to a team and they're deciding to pull the trigger to get a player that might be healthy if Otto Porter hopefully is healthy. Now, moving into the last two players, actually I think there's the last two players that we're going to discuss. First things first, we're going to go to the center. We are going to go to the center, the starting center for the Chicago Bulls, Wendell Carter Jr. For the past few months, Wendell Carter has been in trade talks to secure the second pick for the Golden State Warriors. And now that the draft has gone, there's going to be less and less talks about Wendell Carter. However, there is no secret that Wendell Carter is probably less valuable than Larry Markkinen. But Wendell Carter, in my opinion, is going to be a good player for the Chicago Bulls. But you cannot ignore the trade talks that have happened from Wendell, even last year and this year. Now, this year, it got really concerning because at the end of the day, if you're a Wendell Carter if you're a person that rates Wendell Carter, you ultimately don't want to see him leave Chicago because he's still very young and capable. A lot of people don't rate Wendell Carter, and that's fine, each to their own. I'm not going to be judgmental towards you for not liking a player. That's what the Bulls fans are. You like players, you don't like players. That's just how it is. With Wendell Carter, I personally like him, so I think that it would have been a bit of a tough pill to take to trade him up for the second pick, but ultimately we would have got a good player in return there. However, the draft is done. Patrick Williams is here. He seems to be the real deal. People are all of a sudden speaking so highly of this guy when a few days ago not many people even knew who he was. So that's the situation we're in. Now, Wendell Carter will probably stay with the Chicago Bulls this year, but the fact is that in serious trade talks, the way that the Chicago Bulls were this year, you simply cannot ignore them over the course of next year. So expect Wendell Carter to be in more trade talks throughout the season, throughout next year as well. These are players that the Chicago Bulls might consider trading to get better players, better picks, and a better future. Wendell Carter might be the answer for the Chicago Bulls, but he might not be as well. And that's where the Chicago Bulls need to make their decision. Ultimately, I think if he does stay this season, I'll be happy because this is a proving season for every single one of our players, and I want to give Wendell Carter that chance to prove himself, to get a better season, a breakout season, and show to the Bulls that he is the answer for our center position and for the Chicago Bulls team. Last but not least, and I know people are not going to like this one, but it is simply too big to ignore. Zach LaVine, our best player for the Chicago Bulls for a number of years, has been in talks for trades. Now, ultimately, after he signed that new contract, I'm going to give you a few teams throughout the entire course of the year, multiple years, that he's been linked with a trade to. The Sacramento Kings, obviously a team that wanted to sign him. The Boston Celtics, obviously for Kemba Walker. The New Orleans Pelicans for Drew Holiday. We obviously have now the Dallas Mavericks, wants a third star. The Lakers a few years ago because of Zach LaVine talking highly of them. These are only a few teams that have been linked with Zach LaVine, and there are so much more. The fact of the matter is, Zach LaVine is our best player, and every single team's best player, one way or another, will get linked to a trade, especially when there is no one that's really safe from being traded on our team. As good as Zach LaVine is, he is not untouchable. And people are starting to believe now that the inevitable could happen and we could trade Zach LaVine. Now, this year, I will stay persistent. This year, I'm very confident Zach LaVine will not get traded from the Chicago Bulls. And I have a feeling Zach LaVine himself knows he's not getting traded from the Chicago Bulls. So the fact of the matter is, we will have him for one more year at least, maybe more. Of course, he's very young. He's a potential all-star. He has a future on this team beyond this year, but especially this year, he's going to be a Chicago Bull. I'm so confident of that. If anything happens in relation to Zach LaVine, I'll be absolutely stunned out of my mind. But the fact of the matter is, it is not out of the realms of possibility. We could see a trade from the Dallas Mavericks. Even the Denver Nuggets was another one. We could see a trade out of those for those players. For any player from Dallas, Denver, Lakers, Kings, etc. We could very well see that. But very unlikely. Especially this year. Next year is a different year, a different situation we can discuss. But this year, I think Zach LaVine is going to stay a Chicago Bull. Not many people agree with me on that, but I guess it's time to wait and see. So this is where I'm going to end this video, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the players that have been rumored for trades one way or another from the Chicago Bulls and even waived. There are a lot of news around the Chicago Bulls in terms of trades. But the fact of the matter is, our business could very well be done for the Chicago Bulls. Many people are not going to be happy with the way free agency has gone. But again, what can you expect from a team that has little to no cap space and ultimately can find no trades for our players? because you have people making 7 million like Felicio that you won't be able to trade. Otto Porter's a very hard trade to do. Thaddeus Young and Satoransky are probably the most tradable pieces on this team, but ultimately we could be seeing them be given another chance with the Chicago Bulls, because they've only been here for a year. But again, let me know what you guys think about the players that could potentially be on the trade blocks for the Chicago Bulls. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the Aiden Sports Show YouTube channel. Look, there is little to no news about the Chicago Bulls for free agency at the moment. That seems to be done and dusted for us. Garrett Temple might be the only free agent we are able to sign, considering our roster spots are now filled. But we will wait and see if the Chicago Bulls decide to make a big-time decision now, or if they're going to do it within a year's time when we have the freedom to maybe do it without losing too many assets on this team. With that being said, where will the Chicago Bulls go? Where will we finish? Because ultimately a lot of teams have gotten better within the East. We could be in danger of missing the playoffs. But we have to wait and see. This is a long-term process. We cannot get to a championship within a blink of an eye. We need to trust that these people that are taking over our front office know what they're doing. And I believe that they do know what they're doing, but I do believe that they've been put in a rock and a hard place and have little to no room to move because of the incompetence of the other front office guys that were eventually let go. So it's going to be a work in progress. I do suggest people stay patient, but at the end of the day, you have your right to say what you think. Whether I believe you're right or wrong, it is what it is. But again, we will wait and see what the Bulls will do this season. Hopefully, this is not the end, but maybe this is the team we're going to be rocking with this season, and we're going to wait and see how it goes. Because it could go very well, but it could go exactly how it was last year. Anyway, have a wonderful day. Take care, and peace.